In the once proud kingdom of Avermont, songs were sung not of kings, but of a knight. Sir Aldrich, clad in armor so heavy, some said the earth trembled beneath his steps. His helm bore no crestfur, he needed none. His name was his banner, his silence, his authority. He led legions not with shouts, but with presence. And where Aldrich rode, even fear seemed to flee. They called him the Mountain of Flesh and Steel. He had never lost a duel, never fallen in battle, never been seen kneeling. Until one day, he did. It was on the blood-soaked plains of Viramore, beneath the sky choked with ash and arrows. The enemy had come not with honor, but with fire. They flanked from behind. Screams turned to silence. The unthinkable became real. Aldrich fell. No, not from a blade, but from within. His knee hit the mud. His arm, once a hammer of justice, trembled. And his eyes, hidden behind iron, stared at something no one else could see. Men screamed for him to rise. They shouted his name as arrows rained around him. "Sir Aldrich, stand, stand!" But he did not. He could not. And that moment, the knight who never knelt, brought to one knee broke more than formation. It broke a myth. After the battle, they dragged his body from the field. Not dead, breathing, barely, but shattered. Not in bone, but in soul. The king demanded his return. Aldrich refused. He walked away from Avermont, alone. No squire, no steed, just the weight of failure and the rust of armor that no longer fit. He wandered into the wild, where stories go to die. And for a time, he did. They say he lived among monks in the hollow mountains, speaking only when the snow melted. Others say he sat beneath a tree for a full year, unmoving, as if daring the world to forget him. No one knows for certain, but they all agree on one thing. The knight who could not rise never returned. The tale of Sir Aldrich did not die on the field where he fell, nor in the songs that ceased to sing his name. It spread like fire through dry fields, like a cold that lingers long after winter. And with it, something else began to decay. Something invisible, something sacred. You see, when a knight falls, it is not merely flesh that strikes the dirt. It is faith. And faith, unlike bodies, does not bleed in silence. It howls, it fractures, it infects. The eastern provinces were the first to feel the echo. Once loyal and proud, the sons of Avermont trained their armor shining brighter than their fathers, their oaths louder than their hearts. But when word reached them, not in parchment, but in whispers from passing merchants, something in their posture changed. "Did you hear?" one squire asked another. "The unbroken night broke." At first, they laughed. They told themselves it was a tale spun by drunkards and cowards. But doubts are like arrows. They don't always kill on impact. Sometimes they fester. Sometimes they wait. By the end of that season, a dozen squires deserted their posts. One left behind a note, "I trained to become a myth, but I will not die for a lie." Soon, barracks were half empty. Sparring fields, once alive with steel and shouting, now echoed with wind. Not because of war, but because of absence. Because belief had been bled out. Avermont's allies grew cold. Treaties were honored with silence. Tribute wagons stopped arriving. The roads that once hummed with commerce and alliance grew still. One by one, minor lords declared neutrality, then subtle defiance. Not openly, they still feared the Avermontian wrathbud beneath the surface. Beneath the etiquette and titles, loyalty had decayed like meat behind a gilded door. And all because of one man who did not rise. Yet while nations reshuffled their maps and nobles whispered behind goblets, a figure walked the lands alone. The old man. He bore no crest, no banner, only scars and silence. To some, he was a ghost. To others, a madman clinging to relics of a life buried by time. But children stared at him with quiet awe. Their parents lowered their heads, unsure whether in shame or reverence. And everywhere he went, people asked the same unspoken question. Could it really be him? He never answered. But he didn't need to. He passed through villages blackened by old fire, where chimneys stood without roofs and hearths without heat. He saw altars where gods had once been praised, now serving as tables for soup pots. In one such place, a former chaplain tended to orphans not with sermons, but with songs, gentle ones, about the stars, not the saints. Faith failed us, the chaplain said, not with anger, but exhaustion. But perhaps stories can still warm a child's sleep. The old man nodded. He knew something about stories, about how they can both lift and bury a man. In the high valley of Vern, he found a widow burying her husband with bare hands, the soil frozen and unyielding. Without a word, he dropped to his knees beside her and dug. They said nothing, even when the sun set, even when the wolves howled. When the task was done, she offered him bread. He took only half. As he left, she whispered, "We were told the night would never fall, that he'd protect us." He paused, eyes not on her, but on the distant ridges of Avermont's snowy peaks. "So was I," he said. In Braille, deep in the greenwood, he met the boy. Barely a shadow of a man, that child. But with eyes that carried questions older than kingdoms, he approached while the old man was tending a small fire, roasting a root he had found beneath the frost. "Are you him?" the boy asked, hands trembling not from fear but from hope. "The one who never got up?" The man poked at the fire, the flames reflecting in his tired eyes. "I got up," he said simply. "But they say many things," came the reply. Silence followed. A long, sacred silence, as if the world itself held its breath. Then the boy spoke again, quieter. "Why didn't you get up sooner?" The old man took his time. Not for effect, but because the truth is heavy, and he had carried it for years. "It wasn't the armor," he said, "not the wounds. It was the story." The boy tilted his head. "The story I believed, that I had to always rise without help, that needing others made me less." He looked at the boy. "It took longer to unlearn that than to heal my bones." The boy said nothing, but his stick sword lowered just a little, and in that moment, a different kind of knight was born. Not from steel or title, but from understanding. They sat together until the fire died, and when the boy asked, "Are you still a knight?" the man smiled not sadly, but freely. "No," he said, "but I'm more myself than I ever was." Meanwhile, in the world beyond the woods, a general in the western lands removed his parade armor before a speech and said, "If we demand our men to be statues, then we must not mourn when they crack." A grieving mother wrote a book, The Kneeling Hero. It was banned in Avermont, but secretly copied and passed from hand to hand, until even noble sons whispered its words in the quiet of their chambers. And in Avermont itself, the king stood before the statue of Sir Aldrichon's, the pride of the realm. He did not speak for a long time. Then he ordered it taken down. The court gasped. "Not to erase him," the king said, "but to honor him. Truly." He commissioned a new sculpture. This time, Aldrich would be shown kneeling, not defeated, but alive. His helmet beside him, one hand braced in mud, the other extended not in aggression, but in invitation. Beneath it, an inscription. To rise not perfect, but honest. Not alone, but with others. The old man never returned to Avermont, at least not with his feet. But in 1,000 firesides, in whispered tales passed between shepherds and soldiers, in the silent decisions of men who dared to ask for help, he returned, not as myth, not as ghost, but as man, and in that, he became something rarer than legend. He became understood. There is armor, and then there is the armor we wear beneath the steel. The first is forged in fire, the second, in fear. And while the first may shine in sunlight or crack in battle, the second never leaves us. It clings, even when we sleep. It tightens when we speak. It weighs more than any blade or helmet. We carry it in silence. Sir Aldrich had once worn the finest plate in the kingdom, black and steel chased with silver, a crimson crest etched over his heart, the same heart that beat faster when he was alone, the same heart that, long after the armor was removed, remained burdened by something heavier. They called him the Knight of Unyielding Flame. But flame consumes, and it leaves ash in its wake. Years had passed since the battlefield, since the silence, since the shame. Now, Aldrich lived simply. He no longer traveled with fanfare or purpose, only direction, always forward, as if afraid that if he paused too long, the past might catch up and make him kneel again. He slept in barns, caves, beneath stars, and under broken roofs. His meals were roots, wild greens, sometimes a loaf shared by kind strangers who didn't recognize the ghost in front of them. And he preferred it that way, for when no one knew who he was, he could pretend he didn't either. But the world has its own armor, and it saw through him. In the village of Trestlegate, he met a mason who had once carved the statues of kings, but now sculpted gravestones for children lost to famine. The man drank little and spoke less, But when Aldrich helped him haul stone to a burial ridge, the mason offered a truth as heavy as the granite on their backs. They made me chisel hope into the faces of men who never earned it. Now I carve truth into the names of those who never had a chance. That night, Aldrich sat by a candle, staring at his own reflection in a bowl of water. He could barely recognize the man he'd become, not from age, but from honesty. In the highlands of Wereth, he was caught in a sudden storm. Sheltering beneath an ancient tree, he met a woman old, blind, wrapped in furs. She didn't flinch when he approached. "You walk like someone who used to command silence," she said. He blinked. "You're blind. How would you know?" She smiled. "Because silence still follows you. It just sounds different now." They sat together as the wind howled. She spoke of her son Saul dead in wars they barely understood. "They left with polished armor," she whispered. "But they returned in boxes, and I never knew what they looked like underneath." Then she turned her face toward him. "Did you ever take yours off?" Aldrich opened his mouth and could not answer. One evening, he stumbled upon a monastery ruined by fire, its stone walls blackened, its library nothing but ash. And there, amidst the rubble, sat a monk scribbling prayers into the dirt, not for memory, for mourning. "I write them so God remembers," the monk said, "because I fear we've forgotten ourselves." Aldrich helped him clear the debris, day by day, word by word. By the end of a fortnight, a single line was etched into the last remaining stone. "Blessed are those who've fallen. Do not pretend they never did." Aldrich read it over and over, and wept. He began to speak, slowly at first. A word here, a confession there. He told a shepherd that he had once believed never breaking was strength. He told a widow that shame had been his truest battlefield. He told a child that sometimes courage is simply saying, "I need help." Each time he spoke, the armor inside him cracked just a little. But cracks, you see, let in light. In the city of Elnor, he passed through unnoticed until he met a bard. The young man sang tavern songs of old battles, of glory and fire, and invincible heroes. And when Aldrich heard a line about the knight who rose from death itself, he froze. After the performance, he approached. "That's not how it happened," Aldrich said. The bard frowned. "It's how people want to remember it." Aldrich sighed. "Then let me give you a better ending." He sat. He told the truth. The bard wrote it all. Every hesitation, every doubt, every moment of aching vulnerability. That night, for the first time, a new song was sung. He fell not once, but many times, and rose not perfect, but honest. Not above us, but among us. The knight who broke and lived. The tavern was silent. Then, someone clapped, not for the legend, but for the man. Later, outside the tavern, the bard caught up to him. "Why now?" he asked. "Why speak now after all these years?" Aldrich looked at the stars, soft tears in his tired eyes. "Because I'm tired of being remembered for who I wasn't. The armor we all wear is not made of steel. It's the stories we tell ourselves to survive, the masks we put on to be strong, the silences we carry so others will not see our shaking hand. But if a knight can lay down his sword, if a legend can become a man, then perhaps we, too, can begin to take off the weight we were never meant to carry alone." Somewhere, in the kingdom that once cursed his name, a child now sleeps beneath a blanket woven with old crests. He dreams not of unbroken heroes, but of a man with kind eyes and a hand that reaches out, not to strike but to lift. And that dream is worth more than any throne. Legends do not die. They fade. They fracture. They are forgotten in books, or twisted in songs, or burned into banners no one remembers how to follow. But sometimes they walk into the hills and lie down beneath a nameless sky. And that is enough. The years had turned. The boy from Braille, now a young man, walked with a sword at his hip knot of silver, but wood carved by a farmer's hand. He wore no sigil, carried no title, but stories clung to him like morning fog. He had heard the whispers, that the old knight was gone, that his path had ended in a place no map knew, beyond the veil, where even the birds flew quieter. So the boy, no longer quite a boy, set out, not to find a hero, but to say thank you. He followed the trail not through signs, but stories. A baker in Laskmere who kept a chair always empty, just in case the traveler returned. A blind shepherd who told of a man who taught her goats to listen for wolves. A stone at the monastery, worn smooth by fingers, its prayer still legible despite the wind. Blessed are those who fall and do not pretend they never did. And finally, at the edge of the northern rise, he found it. A tree, twisted by time, rooted in stone, and beneath it, a mound of earth, marked only by a battered helmet, placed gently at its center. No name, no sword, no statue, only silence and peace. The boy knelt, hand resting over the old helm. He whispered, "You got up." No one answered, but in the stillness, he felt it not as words, but as knowing that the man beneath this tree had not died broken. He had died whole. All across Avermont, echoes of the night remain not in war, but in small mercies. A merchant who closed his shop early once a week, not for profit, but to walk his daughter home. A captain who let his soldiers cry before battle and told them strength came not from fearlessness, but from love. A midwife who told mothers, "Breathe, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts." In each of them, a piece of Aldrich lived, not in armor, but in courage. Years later, a chronicler came searching. He had heard the story, heard it twisted and turned, bloated and broken. Some said Aldrich had ascended into myth. Others, that he wandered forever, a ghost in plate. He found the mound beneath the tree. He found the helm, and beside it, a bundle of parchments tied with twine, left by travelers before him. Each one told a different tale. A widow who wrote how the night helped her son bury his father. A farm girl who remembered his silent prayer beside a storm-felled chapel. A smith who claimed the night once helped him reforge a bell not for war but for weddings. The chronicler wept. He took none of the stories. He left his own, and carved one line into the bark of the tree. "Here rests not the knight who never fell, but the man who showed us how to rise." The boy, now grown, returned to Braille. He did not become a knight. He became a storyteller, and when he stood before crowds in dusty taverns or moonlit squares, he did not speak of dragons or invincible warriors. He spoke of a man who failed and kept walking, who was brave enough to fall in front of everyone and get up slowly, who laid down his armor not in shame, but in truth. And so, legends did not die. They became bread shared between strangers. They became songs sung low to sleepless children. They became a battered helm beneath a tree, untouched by time. And the world, at last, learned this: that true strength is not to rise above all others, but to kneel beside them when they cannot rise alone. Even heroes fall. The greatest of them fall with us.